welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. And today we have a very special episode. I spent some time chatting with my new dear good friend, Jennifer Landon of the Facebook group Your Grief Matters. So this episode is our conversation. We talk all about grief and our journeys, how we started, and where we're going. I hope you enjoy. If you'd like to see the video of the Zoom call between Jennifer and I, you can do so by becoming a patron on my Patreon. Go on over to patreon.com/Nikki the Death Doula. Hey everybody, I am here with Jennifer with Your Grief Matters, the Facebook group, and we're just kind of chit-chat and getting to know each other. So hi Jennifer, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so happy to have you. You kind of found me randomly one day. That was very exciting. And you found my podcast, right? Before you found my
Yes.
website? Yeah. Awesome.
Yes.
Yay, that makes me
Yes.
so excited. I'm always happy to hear like people are actually listening to this. Because I'm putting it out there for a reason. So tell me just like a little bit about yourself, where you live, what you do, all your stuff.
Sure. So I live in New Hampshire, Manchester, New Hampshire, and my real job, my paycheck, comes from a construction trade association. I'm a vice president for education and workforce development. So I coordinate education programs for those who are in the industry, safety, leadership, etc. And I also do a lot of workforce development initiatives for the state of New Hampshire and Vermont.
Wow.
So that's kind of my paycheck.
Okay.
I'm also, I vice president of National Association of Women in Construction for the Granite State chapter. I wear a lot of different hats. One of my favorite hats is one of the leadership classes that I teach and doing the workforce development stuff.
Awesome. Wow. I mentioned to you in an email that I drove through New Hampshire, but I spent some time
Yeah.
in Vermont last summer, and what a beautiful part of the country. Yeah, it was lovely,
Yeah.
and I look forward to coming back this summer to Vermont again, and maybe we'll swing through New Hampshire again.
Yeah. Well, I think you were probably, if you were on were you on the Long Trail,
Yeah,
Appalachian Trail?
we're on the
Yes.
Long
So
Trail. Yeah.
I believe you may have actually been within a mile of my parents. My parents are
Oh wow.
located in Vermont, kind of in between the Ludlow and Rutland, Vermont
Okay.
areas.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you
Yeah.
may have
We
been.
we spent a day in Rutland, so I know that
Okay. So,
area a little
yeah.
bit.
So,
Yeah.
yep, that's where I grew up.
Oh, how cool. Oh, what a great
Yeah.
area. Oh, it's so pretty.
Yeah.
Anyway. So tell me a little bit about your journey here with grief and yeah, dive right into it.
How I got into it. Sure.
Yeah.
I think from what I'm gathering, most people who are entering this grief world of grief support tend to be people who have experienced grief. Would you agree with that?
100%. Yes.
Okay. Yes.
100%.
Yes. Well, I'm not one of those. So,
Okay.
um, I mean, not to say that I haven't. I certainly have lost a very very dear friend of mine, but I think my journey is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Backstory.
Okay.
A very dear friend of mine, I was telling you about leadership.
Yeah.
She taught we have a future leaders in construction program that I run, and she was my co-facilitator with this. And last June, she lost her son in a
Oh.
military training accident.
Oh no.
Yes. So, for I'm just going to kind of take his picture and put it up here for you. So,
Oh.
um,
What is his name? So we can all hold that
yes.
in our
So,
hearts.
absolutely. So, Sula Sapio is my very dear friend,
Okay.
and her son is Captain Nicholas Peter Losapio. So,
Captain Nicholas Peter, what was the last name again?
Losapio,
Lo Sapio.
Losapio. So, yes, thank you everyone for
Yeah,
keeping them
please.
in your
That's
hearts and
absolutely.
sending love. So he was in the military training accident that happened last June, the Osprey crash in California.
Oh wow.
So um, I I was reaching out to her as we do, right? We want to be supporters.
Yeah.
So I was sending texts, I was leaving voice messages, sending emails. I'd send little GIFs, I'd send cartoons, just wanting her to know that I was thinking of her.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think for all of our listeners, one of the things that we have to keep in mind that please don't expect a response, right?
Yep.
I never did. All I wanted to do was to make sure that Sue knew I was there for her
Yep.
and never expected a phone call back. Once in a while I'd get a response to a text, and that was great. I did. We had a phone call one day, and she was talking about how frustrated she was that she couldn't find support. She said, I know what I need to do. I need tools, and I don't know what those tools are. And I can't find a counselor. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't surprise me
Mm-hmm.
because just like so many other industries, right, healthcare, mental health, there's a lack of people
Yep.
going into this, and there's burnout, right? So she told me that she said, the counselors that I'm reaching out to, they're either booking several weeks or months out, or they're just not returning my calls.
Yep. Yep.
So in typical Jennifer fashion, I made this my mission. And I thought, I'm going to do everything that I can to help my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to some of my colleagues. I was finding out from them if they knew any counselors who might be available. So I'm just blasting her with as much information as I can. It included, maybe some names of counselors. It included podcasts and articles and blogs and you name it. I was just out there thinking, she'll Sue will look at whatever she wants to look at when she's ready to look at it if she wants to.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I figured I can be that support. I can provide that information for her because I think that when you're in the grief space, you've got that brain fog, right?
Yep. Grief brain.
Yeah, grief brain. And you've got the grief brain and you're thinking, I don't even know where to begin.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought if I can share all of this information with her, she'll pick and choose. Well, one of the resources that I found was a grief coach certification program. Well, what's this?
Mm-hmm.
So I looked into it and I'm thinking, I'm not sure that I'm qualified. I mean, you heard my background. I work in the
Yeah.
construction sector. I mean, I do have a background in, working with refugees. That's my master's degree in teaching English to speakers of other languages. So, I've got a little bit of, that side of things, that, education and training and whatnot. But when I was looking at this, I thought, I don't think I'm qualified to get into this program. So I reached out to the founder,
Mm-hmm.
Dora Carpenter. They had a class coming up starting in October. And I said, I'm interested in learning more about this to see if I'm a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the day that I had my phone conversation with Miss Dora, I believe it was a Thursday. Our telephone call was scheduled at 11:30. And shortly after 11 o'clock, I was leaving a church funeral service for another friend's
Wow.
brother-in-law.
Wow.
And I'm in the car and I'm thinking, these things like the universe is just aligning, right? Things are just being thrown at me.
Yep.
So during my conversation with Miss Dora, I told her the why. I said, I'm really just looking for affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
And her response, and I quote, was affirmation, 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 affirmation. I said, okay.
There you go.
So yeah, so I was like, again, stars are aligning. So I came home and I told my husband, I said, listen, I want to take this class. And ironically, the timing of the class was perfect. I have things going on in the evenings all the time, but it just so happened that the schedule of this class, I had nothing booked.
That's awesome. That is
Yep.
perfect
So
timing. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, so I went through the program, and the program is from grief to gratitude. It's the From Grief to Gratitude certification program, and it is with the the Institute of Professional Grief Coaching.
Okay.
And it is accredited through the International Coaching Federation.
Awesome.
So, having been in academics, I was like, I want to make sure that this is not just a fly by night type of thing. So, I did my due diligence and made sure that I had the certification. So that's kind of how I got into the grief coaching side of things. Again, not because I necessarily was in need, but I felt the need to do something for my friend.
That's wonderful. And I feel like a lot of us, like you said at the beginning, a lot of us get into this because we've experienced our own grief, but you got into this because you were secondhand experiencing somebody else's grief. So at least that's the way I'm seeing it. And that's really beautiful. So thank you for sharing that story, but also thank you for doing that,
Yeah.
Not a lot of people. I had a whole episode on, what to say and what not to say to people who are grieving, because most people don't know, they don't know what to say. They're like, oh God, sorry about your loss. And that's where it ends.
Right.
But, then people like us take that extra effort to be like, no, we need to do something else than just say, I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah. Well, part of the program was I had to have a pro bono client. And that again was like, okay, so this is perfect, because again, Sue was struggling finding a good counselor. So I knew that I needed to talk to her in person. Distance wise, we weren't going to be able to see each other face to face. So, and it was not an appropriate ask via Zoom, or excuse me, via, text or telephone call. I wanted to be able to see her via Zoom and to ask her, I wanted to give her first rights to be my pro bono client. And again, remember I told you that I had just left a funeral. I had a few other people in mind, unfortunately, that I might be able to reach out to if Sue was not available or interested. So I contacted Sue, said, hey, I'd love to set up a Zoom call. And again, nobody knew what I was doing other than my husband. I hadn't talked to any friends, no family or anyone. So the day that we had our Zoom meeting scheduled, Sue sends me a text and she's like, can't make it today, a bad day. And I was like, okay, she's having a griefy moment. So I responded and said, that's exactly why I expect to see you on the call.
Nice.
And I'm not usually that aggressive, but it's like, you need to be on this call with me.
Yeah.
She got on the call and, I kind of gave her the backstory of what I was doing. And I said, I need a pro bono client and I wanted to give you first rights. Is this something that you'd be willing to work with me on? And she said, fine, as long as you know it's not going to work.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
I mean, again, she's in a grief moment.
She is. She's in the thick of it at that point. Sure.
Right. She was, so, and she, fine, as long as you know it's not going to work. And I said, absolutely. I said, if nothing else, this forces us to have a conversation once a week.
See, there you go.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we went through, we went through, we had our sessions, and afterwards, at one point she said, I got more out of our conversations. And honestly, mostly what I did was listen. And I gave her a few tools here and there. And she said, I got more out of these than the air quote professionals, right? Because as a grief coach, and this, we're not counselors, we're not therapists.
Yep.
We don't diagnose, we can't prescribe medication, all of those disclaimers, right?
Yeah.
And she felt that she had some tools that she could work with.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. Oh, and
so that made me feel this is something I need to do. I don't know how yet. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but.
So I'm curious, after you worked with her, did she say it worked?
I have to ask her, Sue, did it work?
Did it work?
I think, yeah. I think it's funny because I think that when you're in the thick of it, she may not even remember that conversation that we had, right? to her credit, she may not remember saying, fine, as long as you know it's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, hi, Kitty. I just saw
Yeah.
your kitty go in the background.
He went downstairs. Just I heard a noise down there. He's probably inspecting it for me.
So, I do think if I were to say, hey, Sue, did our conversations, were they beneficial? I'm pretty sure, I'm confident that she would say yes and thank you.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
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 It's hard when you're in the thick of it to think anything will ever get better, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think we've all seen
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
awesome. So just a couple random questions. What is something that you learned in your studying for grief coaching and in studying grief in general that surprised you the most? I feel like this is
Well,
a
I
job
think that,
interview.
yeah.
It's not. It's not a job interview.
you know, I think I think it was really realizing that most everybody who was going into this grief work is on or is in their living their own life journey, their own grief journey.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think that was
definitely.
something that was kind of like a wow. And I think also that we don't we don't talk about it, right? I mean, I got into it by happenstance, by an unfortunate happenstance, and I don't think that we talk about it enough,
Nope.
right? I
You're
think that
right.
that's something. It's to me. I mean, let's face it. Something happens, and grief is more than just loss of life, as
Yep.
we know, right? There's so many other forms of grief. My focus, I think, right now is looking at the loss of life and helping people through that. But I think when you're looking at, having to go back into the workplace, right? We get 3 to 5 days of bereavement leave, if you
Oh,
even get it,
oh, that's my soapbox. I get so mad.
right?
It's
And then when you go back to work, you're expected to perform at 100%,
yep.
maybe 80%, but you're still expected to perform.
Hmm.
And what I realized kind of through my class and listening to podcasts like yours and doing this research, I'm realizing that, man, we've got a lot of work to do. We have so much work to do to try to get people to understand that grief doesn't go away. And
No.
there's a judgment that I can't believe it. It's been 6 months and they're still talking about it. They're still breaking down. Well, yes.
Hmm.
So I think that there's so much that we can do in this space to help educate and support those who are on their grief journey and
Hmm.
those on the outside.
Hmm. And that's another thing. That was one of the couple things that was most surprising to me was working with people who didn't necessarily suffer the loss.
Yeah.
Because when somebody is really in the thick of it and the people around them suffer too. They may not have the same connection with whatever the loss was, but they've lost the semblance of relationship they had with that person. It's different now because that person is grieving. So
Yeah.
they may not recognize that's their own little grief there. And that was the biggest thing was like everything is grief practically, any type of
Yes.
loss is grief, even if it's loss of a job or like I said, just loss of a relationship or, something has changed and it's just not the same anymore. And that's hard. It's hard for people to accept that, and move past it or not move past it, but move with it.
Right. To move with it and to live with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's why I started the Your Grief Matters Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not right now, I'm not set up to take clients. I did file for business. So I am a registered business in the state of New Hampshire. I
Yay.
think I still have to do something with the IRS. I'm not sure about that or the government. I'll figure that out after. But,
Yeah.
I figured that I'm in this mode. I might as well kind of keep going on this. And I thought, well, the quickest and easiest way for me right now was to start this Facebook group. And I'll tell you that it has been very long. I mean, I just got certified in December.
Mm-hmm.
So this is all very new to me. I did start a YouTube page. Again, all very new to me. I'm
Yeah. I
still trying
watched
to
your
figure
video
out.
this morning on wearing something that makes you feel good. I love that.
Oh yeah, and I've got all sorts of stuff like that. So I the YouTube thing is new to me, but I'm also like, you know what, I'm not looking to, get all of these fans and to make all this money or anything like that. I
Hmm.
really just want to be able to share resources with this. So
Hmm.
it was maybe a month after starting the Facebook group. I was looking to see how many followers I had, and ironically, Nikki, somebody got hold of it from Rutland, Vermont, and invited a whole bunch of people from Rutland.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, there's my hometown, right? So
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe when I go back there one of these times, maybe I could do some kind of a public forum, just go to the library, have people come in, hang out and talk about grief. I don't know what that's going to look like. But
Yeah.
I I got online one day and I looked and I had over 100 followers. And again, I'm not one to be like, oh, look at all these people,
Hmm.
social media, whatever. But I said to my husband, I said, wow, I've got over 100 followers on my Facebook group and it's been just about a month.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. But then, Nikki, oh God, I'm going to lose it. I,
Oh.
no, I said to my husband, I got so choked up. I said, there's over 100 people on this Facebook group that need support or they know somebody who needs support,
Absolutely.
right? And i was
Absolutely.
i was so i was so overcome by that. I'm like, oh my gosh, because my whole goal with this journey is, I said to my husband Eric, I said, if the time and money that I'm spending, I said, if the only outcome I have is to help my friend Sue, then this is a huge success. If I can touch other people's lives, then that's just a bonus.
Hmm.
So when I was looking at, wow, over 100 people on this Facebook group that might need support.
Yeah.
So that just kind of continues to drive me.
Hmm.
Part of what I started was, I thought, what can I do to kind of keep people engaged?
Hmm.
Again, this is not, I got a full-time job that keeps me crazy busy. So I thought, what can I do to keep people engaged? And I thought, well, maybe once a week or so, I'll, kind of come up with some kind of a tip or something. And so I started the ZYX of grief.
Okay.
And so, when I go on, it's like, hey, Jennifer from Your Grief Matters. And today we're going to be doing the ZYXs of grief. Why ZYX and not ABC? Because when grief knocks at your door, she has a tendency to turn your whole world upside down and make things backwards. So, you know what? We're just going to honor her and go with it.
Nice. I like that. I like that a lot. That's
Yeah,
very
so I
true.
thought, just a little bit of a different twist on it. You
Hmm.
see the ABCs of grief. There's a couple books out there. There's I believe a podcast. I don't know if it's a podcast, but there's somebody out there that I follow with all of these other resources that are out there that does some ABCs with grief. I know Dora Carpenter has a book with the
Hmm.
ABCs of grief. So I'm just going to switch it up.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense too. So that's great. And that's why I felt like I connected with you so much is like I started this podcast thinking five people might listen to it. And
Yeah.
I still don't have a ton of listeners right now. That's okay. I don't care. I have like an average of 20 to 25 listeners per episode. And you know what? That's 20 to 25 people that
Yeah.
are hearing this. And that's all
Yeah.
that really matters to me is if like, and I told my husband, I was like, if one person feels a little bit better hearing that their feelings are valid and they're okay, great. My job's done. Sure, I'd
Yeah.
like to reach more people. I'd love for everybody to know that what you're feeling's okay. This is normal.
Yeah. It's natural. It's normal.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah,
That was the
exactly.
hardest thing for me to accept in my personal grief journeys is that everything I felt was normal, because you have certain feelings or thoughts and you're like, I must be crazy. We're
Yeah.
not crazy. We know we're not crazy. It's normal. Whatever you felt, somebody else out there has felt it too.
Yes. Yes. And at all different extremes, right?
Hmm.
Because we all grieve our own way.
Hmm.
So if somebody
Yes.
is feeling, whatever that feeling, whatever that emotion is, whether it's guilt, hurt, anger, whatever those emotions are, there's all of those different varying degrees of that.
Hmm.
So our journey and the whys behind it.
Yep.
So our journeys are all completely independent. And I think that in our society, because we don't, I think because we don't plan for it like some other cultures might,
Mm-hmm.
that when it happens, no matter what the situation, we're still in shock. There's still a shock that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
I
Absolutely.
think that even people who terminal illness, you know it's going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and when it does, it's still a shock. So
Yep.
one of the things, Nikki, I don't know if you've done an episode on this or not, and I would certainly be interested in sharing the information if you do put it out there. And again,
I'll write it
states
down.
all
What
have
is
their
it?
yeah, write it down. I got all sorts of ideas.
I have a running
um,
list of ideas, so I'm open. What you got?
so the end of life preparation,
Yes. Mhm.
right?
I like that.
Get your documents in order, because I don't know how many people you've talked to, but the podcast, the everything I'm reading online and all of this research and everything I'm doing, you may not want to think about, you have to do your will or a trust, the health care, all of those documents that you
Mm-hmm.
have to deal with. Uh, yes, it is time, and it
Mm-hmm.
may cost you some money.
Mm-hmm.
The benefit is not necessarily to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
The benefit is to those who you leave behind,
Yep.
because you're now, as somebody who just, if you're in that grief journey, grief has just been thrown in your face, you have a loss, and now all of a sudden you have to try to figure out how to navigate
Mm-hmm.
all of this, if there was no will,
Mm-hmm.
um or if the will was never updated. I've heard horror stories about that,
Oh yeah.
about the ex-wife or an ex-girlfriend getting everything because the will wasn't updated, and even just your daily, um, what's the word I'm looking for, responsibilities,
Mm-hmm.
like paying the telephone bill,
Mm-hmm.
the cable bill, and having access to all of those passwords. Because can you imagine the frustration and the added trauma that keeps
Yep.
reoccurring when you're trying to get in touch with the telephone company
Mm-hmm.
saying, I need to cancel my spouse's phone.
Yep.
And it can take months to
It
do that,
can.
even with the extra death certificates that you get.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it just keeps resurfacing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything like that. So the more that you can do to be prepared to help those you leave behind, you're doing such a huge favor.
Yep. That's something as an end of life doula, I cannot harp on people enough to do your advanced directives. I don't care if you're 19 years old, do your advanced
Yes.
directives. Fill it
Yeah.
out. And I don't know how, like, I know every state's a little bit different. In Ohio, it's relatively easy to get those documents.
Yeah.
You go
Yeah.
online, download them, fill them out. You can file them with the state. You can even just have notarized copies in your desk drawer at home, but have them, make sure
Yeah.
somebody knows where they are and what's in them. And I personally keep a spreadsheet in a Dropbox that I share with my husband and my parents and like a couple friends I trust, that is just lists of like, here are some, like my phone account, my this account, like, no passwords or anything. That's separate with my husband, but just random names of people that they might need to notify that I'm gone. The
Yes.
people they wouldn't think about, like a client I might be working with, because they're not going to have all my client files. Like, just here's some phone numbers of people you need to call to let them know I'm gone.
Yeah.
So, and that's a running list, so I can change it as needed. But yeah, oh my God, everybody listening, please fill out your advanced directives. Please fill out your advanced directives. It will take a little bit of time, but I promise you, it's like the forms in Ohio for your final will, you can do it on, like, there's a myriad of websites you can do it for free. And it's like 4 pages. Healthcare power of attorney and financial power of attorney, those are like, and living will, those are like 4 to 8 pages each. So half hour your time, maybe an hour. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, do it. But yeah, also having lists of accounts and who to contact and yeah.
And social media, even,
Yep.
right? To be able to manage and close down those accounts.
That's a big one. I attended a webinar on online presence and what happens when somebody dies, because there are certain things you can and can't do. Like if I have my password for my bank account just written on a piece of paper under my keyboard, as an IT person, please don't do that. But if I did, and my husband was like, "Oh, here's your password," and he logged in and made changes to my account, that's fraud. He could go to jail for that because he's not. I don't have him listed on my account. Or like if my next door neighbor was like, "Oh, let me help you out," and I'll log into her account, that's fraud. You can't do that. I have to, while I'm still alive, say this person is allowed to access my account when I'm gone. So things like, and financial power of attorney should cover that. So yeah, you got to prepare for that stuff. It's sticky.
Yeah.
And it gets more and more complex with the more online accounts we have everywhere.
Yeah. And I think that's, to me, that's part of our responsibility, as grief coaches to let folks know that this is something that everybody should be looking at and taking seriously.
Mm-hmm.
No matter
Absolutely.
your age, doesn't matter if you have anything or not.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay. Another random question. If
Yeah.
you could recommend only one book for everybody to read that has to do with grief and or dying, what would it be? Maybe two. I'll let you pick two. It's a hard one.
That is a hard one. I'm not sure that I could pick one.
Okay.
I'm not sure that I could pick one. I haven't, because most of the books that I've been reading have been more on kind of like personal journeys,
Mm-hmm.
not the research side of things, but more on the personal journey side of things. And that's really where I have been learning a lot. Ironically, one of the books that I read, I can't remember the exact title of it, but it was about a boy, Sam, who um, had substance issues, and
Mm-hmm.
come to find out he from Vermont, right? So a girlfriend of mine gave me this book, and it was the mom's story, and I think it
Oh,
was like from
wow.
I think it was had something to do with grief, garlic, and gratitude. Those three words:
Oh,
grief, garlic,
wow.
and gratitude. Yeah, and it was a great read, and she um, it was the mother's journaling. I'm having recollections now. So it was the mother's journaling and how she actually used Facebook to help her get through, not get through, but to help her express what she was going through during grief.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really great first read for me, looking at it from the standpoint of somebody who has experienced grief. The other thing that I found really, really valuable in that was statements that she made about judgment and the things that people say. And she lost her child to an overdose,
Mm-hmm.
and so the judgment that goes with that is just absolutely unacceptable. The judgment that goes with losing your life to suicide,
Yeah.
right,
Mm-hmm.
is is just unacceptable. Um, I think one of the other things that I found interesting, and you had asked me earlier about some of what I had learned, was again some of the language that we use. I think
Mm-hmm.
that the term committed suicide,
Yes.
right? We
Yeah,
don't
that's
use that
that's one of
anymore.
those terms we're trying to
Yeah,
stop using. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and I'm hearing it over and over again. I'm hearing, losing your life to suicide, which
Yep.
just makes so much more sense, and it's so, I guess, less offensive. I'm
Yes.
not a big PC type of person, but it's
Yeah.
definitely seems a lot less offensive. And again, the judgment piece of it, folks. I think the world that I work in right now,
Mm-hmm.
um, we don't know what people are leaving when they get into the workforce, when they get onto the job site,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? So I'd love to know what resources are out there. Again, you and I talked a little bit about this, Nikki, about workplace grief, because I
Yes.
think of it, it's not just grief, right? It's the whole mental health issue.
Yeah.
If somebody shows up onto a job site, or even if you're dealing with somebody in customer service and you're thinking, boy, that person was a bleep, right?
Right.
Well, we don't know what baggage they're carrying. We don't
Mm-hmm.
know what weight is on their shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know if they have to go home to a sick child.
Yep.
And I'm not talking just colds, right?
Yeah.
You know, they may have a child with a terminal illness, and we may not know that. A lot of people are very private. They don't want to share their information. They may have a parent with Alzheimer's that they're having to figure out how to deal with that. They may have, you know, a cousin with substance abuse, and they're trying to help them. I mean, we don't know what people are experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really, really important to try to again educate, support people to stop the judgment
Mm-hmm.
and really live a life filled with compassion and kindness and gratitude and
Yes.
really put love above all. I mean, I'm not all rainbows and unicorns, and it may sound like it, but really, truly, like it's love above all. Just put
Mm-hmm.
it out there, you know, and that's
Absolutely.
again what I'm trying to do with the Your Grief Matters.
Yes. That's amazing. Wow. Thank you. So one last question. What are your plans for the future? What does the future look like for you and your grief matters?
I don't have 100% of that plan yet.
That's
However,
okay.
I do believe that things are, again, you know, the universe is aligning, whatever. I do believe that some things are going to start to pick up for me. One of the things that I'm most passionate about is the workplace grief.
Hmm.
And given the world of construction, we do have, I work for a trade association and our national association, Associated Builders and Contractors. We do have a total health, human health workbook, I guess.
Hmm.
And, you know, there's a little bit in there about grief. What I'd like to be able to do is to take this to organizations or
Yes.
to do public speaking opportunities to speak at conferences,
Hmm.
to do workshops and things like that to help organizations understand a little bit more about grief, to understand about some of the language that we should and should not use, and to provide some tips for those people on both sides, right? Because I look at it from the side of the person who is grieving
Hmm.
and then everybody else, because the person who's grieving, when they walk back into work, and again, Nikki, I think if we can have these conversations more often and be
Yes.
more comfortable with it, the
Yes.
person who just experienced loss, they have to be able to use their voice and articulate what they need when they go back to work.
Hmm. Yes.
And
100%. 100%
and
agree.
the work culture needs to understand that not everybody is going to end up in a corner in a puddle, right?
Hmm.
Some people just want to put their heads down, go to work, leave me alone, let me do my job. That's the way that they're going to process their grief. Others are going to need the hugs. They're
Hmm.
going to need to hear the name,
Hmm. Yes.
right? They're going to want people to say, "Hey Sue, how are you doing? I'm so sorry to hear about the loss of your son Nick." Right? A lot of people are afraid to do that because they don't want to upset the person. So I think that you can kind of hear the passion coming out, right? I think
Yes.
that this is
Yes, I can.
really, really what I want to be able to do. I was actually my stepdaughter, Victoria, actually reached out to me. She works for an agency in Maine that helps resettle refugees. So lots of counselors there. And she said, "Hey, you know, maybe you'd be interested in doing an in-service training with us." So I have a conversation sometime next week with those folks. And again, I don't know what that's going to look like, but boy, I'm willing to do the research because within a refugee population, the we can't even imagine the
Oh
grief
my
that they go
gosh.
through.
No,
It's yeah,
no.
yeah,
Yeah. That there's a soapbox I don't want to get on right now, but that is a
yes,
soapbox of mine is our treatment of refugees because
yes,
you can't possibly understand what it's like to lose literally everything you have and then be thrown suddenly into a completely new country where you may not even speak the language.
Yeah.
After you have lost,
you don't look the same.
And then to be okay. I don't want to get on my soapbox.
Yes, we won't go there. We won't go there. Yeah. So
no soapbox.
So I think that, to me, little bits and pieces maybe opening up. And I think that's where I want to take it, just a little bit here and there. Again, I'm not looking to be like, hey, quit my job, going full time, doing this. That's not my goal right now.
Right.
My goal is to really kind of help people. And then once I get all of my business affairs in order, get my bank account set up, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not an entrepreneur, so I'm, kind of winging it here. I think that once all of that's set up, then I'll probably start building out my clientele and then doing some individual grief coaching and possibly doing more with support groups and things like that.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. I always say I'm not an entrepreneur either, but apparently I am. So we are, whether we think we are or not, we are, because look at what we're doing. So that's great.
Yes.
So as you know, I end every episode with the death deck.
Yes.
So, hang on, I forgot. It's behind me. Give me 1 second.
Okay, sure.
All right. The death deck. I'll put in some fun sound effects of that. Look at this. This thing's huge. It's a big deck.
Wow.
I know. That's not all of it. I left some cards in the box. There we go. It's a big deck. Anyway, so you've seen it. It's a little too big to shuffle, so I usually just take half the deck. We'll shuffle it up. See what our question of the week is. Picking at random. All right. You find your absolute dream home, but learn the previous owner was brutally murdered inside. Are you still interested? That's a little morbid. It's a little more morbid than most of my questions, but we're going with it. What do you think?
Absolutely, yes.
I totally agree. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I would, hope they cleaned it up.
Well, I believe that all spirits are good spirits. I believe that, once passing, I'm not afraid of, bad voodoo. I think that I where my husband and I live now, we live in an old neighborhood and we have weird things happen all the time. Just today, Nikki, before I got on the call, I walked downstairs, hit the bottom stair, and this happens to my husband way more often than me. TV turns on. The remote control is way over on another part of the room, not even facing the TV, right?
Ooh,
so I'm like, oh, hello. But those things don't bother us.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, okay, so, if somebody's brutally murdered, then, hopefully I'd be able to be there and be like, hey, hope you're doing okay. I
know. I used to live, this house is over 100 years old, but I lived in an even older house a long time ago, and I was in my young 20s, and I would hear walking around a lot. And again, it never bothered me. And on occasion I should be like, hey, how you doing? Hope you're okay. I don't know. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for answering all my questions, and tell everybody where they can find you.
Absolutely. Your Grief Matters
on Facebook. So please come check out the group. There's awesome conversations going on all the time, and we would love to see you there. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer.
Yeah. Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening today. It really helps the algorithm so more people can find me. But if you'd like to find me elsewhere, I'm at nikkithedeathdoula.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram at Nikki the Death Doula. Please feel free to reach out to me there. And if you'd like to support me on Patreon, you can find me at patreon.com/Nikki the Death Doula. As always, all the money I receive through my Patreon goes into a fund so that I can provide pro bono work to those who cannot afford my services. And you'll also get access to bonus content and maybe even a shout out here on the podcast. Scripts, editing, sound design, production, literally everything is done by me, myself, just me. Except for the music. The music is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod, and you can find license information at filmmusic.io/standard-license. And as always, a special shout out to my best friend and husband for continuing to support me along the way.